If you are trying to catch a liar, specifically like this video, my last video, a psychopath, so someone who's extremely good at faking body language, who's extremely good at fooling people, you must use your limited brain bandwidth to focus on one thing. And in my opinion, you should always focus on the words. Even a psychopath cannot fake the words. They trip up. They say the wrong thing. They say too much. They avoid something they shouldn't avoid. They have plot holes. Even blockbuster movies have plot holes. So what chance does a low IQ psychopath have of telling a story that has no plot holes? If you pay attention closely, you should be able to figure it out. Hollywood often portrays psychopaths as almost superhuman, effortlessly conning and manipulating the rest of us at will. But is this an accurate depiction? And if so, can we outsmart them, or are we doomed to fail? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before I proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. And if you tap that thank you button, I appreciate it. In today's video, we're going to analyze a segment of Dr. Phil's interview with the parents of Summer Wells. This is the 8th video I've done in the Summer Wells series, and it's the 3rd video about this particular interview with Dr. Phil. In the last video, I showed you 4 ways to catch a psychopath. In today's video, I'm going to show you 4 ways to recognize you're talking to someone who might be a psychopath. Without further ado, let's listen.
What do you think should happen to somebody that did this? To the person that did this, what do you think should happen to them?
They should be put away for the rest of their lives. I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
Out of the gate, if I ask you what happened.
All right, so this is about where we left off in my last video. And I had lots of comments of people talking about this particular clip, my reaction to it. So I just want to address those comments because I do think lots of them have merit. So when Candace Wells said they should be put away for the rest of their lives, I heard lives as a plural, which to me means that she might have some guilty knowledge that multiple people were involved in Summer's disappearance. And if that's the case, it lends some credibility to one of the theories that's still on the table, that Summer was literally sold, that it was a transactional agreement between Candace and some third party, or more likely Dawn and some party, or that they might have owed a debt to someone or done exchange with someone, and they know that that person's part of a group, so they assume that multiple people came and claimed Summer as payment, and they're too scared to turn those people over. But either way, if you heard an S at the end of when she said life, it suggests that she's picturing multiple people in her mind, and we need to question why that is. Because if their story is true, and they think that some lone weirdo took their daughter, it wouldn't make sense for her to suggest multiple people. So listen again.
Okay.
What do you think should happen to somebody that did this? To the person.
Also, remember, even the way they questioned her, what do you think should happen to somebody who did this, is singular. So they're not saying, what do you think should happen to the people who did this, or, the kidnappers. They're questioning her in the singular.
The person that did this, what do you think should happen to them?
They should be put away for the rest of their lives.
The rest of their lives, right? She kind of like trailed off the S. If you heard that S, this answer is more important than if you didn't hear the S. And this could just be an audio illusion. It could just be the way she talks. I'm not going to belabor this point too much. I already addressed it in the last video. But I had so many comments of people saying, hey, DD, they can just mean she doesn't know who the person is. She doesn't know if it's he or she, so she's saying they. And I agree with you 100%. However, the fact that she said lives as a plural suggests that she's picturing multiple people in her mind, despite them even asking her the question in the singular. All right, let's move on.
I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
Out of the gate, if I ask you what happened to Jordan, he was missing. What should happen to that person? don't answer it because I know it would be bad. You wouldn't say, it wouldn't be a pause there. You wouldn't say put them away for a long time. They should go away forever. You would have a very extremely graphic answer to that.
Yeah, it wouldn't take me 5 seconds to think about it. Give me 10 seconds in a room alone with them, and we'll be through.
If someone stole your dog,
Yeah, same answer.
that's the answer.
Same answer. But here, what you get is very different. Here, what you get is a pause and then a response.
Person that did this, what do you think should happen to them?
Okay, now, you said, what do you think should happen to them? First thing she does is close her eyes,
She's blocking.
We call that eye blocking or escaping. Right?
Yes.
We're getting away.
and then there's a pause.
Yep, she's thinking.
Watch her respiration. Watch her breathing. You can't miss it.
If you've followed my channel for a while, you know my opinion about body language. I think that it's far too subjective to be of any use in detecting deception. The two guys here in the video are actually part of the behavior panel on YouTube, a channel much larger than mine. We analyzed them in the last video I did in this series, and actually ended up agreeing with a lot of what they said, because they do hedge their analysis a lot, right? So even they say clearly that body language and all the stuff they're pointing out here is not useful for detecting deception. It's useful for detecting stress or any other number of things that are overtly communicated with body language, but not necessarily deception. Deception is something that we detect on this channel through the words that people choose to use and the words they avoid using.
Put away for the rest of their lives. I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
A lot here. We see her eyebrow go up there. She's not sure what she should say. Everything she's doing says I'm unsure and shouldn't be saying this. That's what we're seeing there.
Yes, for sure. And then you'll notice if I ask you those same questions, your chin would jut. You would say that person needs to be put away for the rest of their life and tormented with no second guessing. The other thing you likely would not do is drift down into your right in an emotional state. We haven't seen a lot of emotion, but we see it here.
Okay, but we're going to see emotion here in just a second. She's talked about her disappearance. She's talked about looking for her. She's looked at the bed she's not in. She's looked at trigger after trigger after trigger, and not a tear. But then you ask about the Cornbread Mafia.
Watch the side of her mouth start dragging down.
Since the night of June 15th, there are still no answers as to where Candace and Don's 5-year-old daughter Summer could be. Now, I'm here with body language experts Scott Rouse and Greg Hartley, dissecting their interrogation with Summer's parents. All right, let's see this one.
The guys who run organized crime around you worried about them at all?
Oh, that quite.
All right, here you can see Candace crying. Now, in my last video, we looked at Don, and I do believe Don is a psychopath. I am not a clinician, so I cannot diagnose him. However, he exhibits some of the traits and some of the language of a psychopath. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm treating him as a psychopath, or at least someone with psychopathic tendencies. In other words, as I pointed out in my last video, he has convincing face and body language. He exhibits duper's delight when he gets away with lying. So in other words, you or me, if we're lying, we're probably so stressed about it that we're not giggling and shaking like a dog wagging its tail when we get away with a lie. But psychopaths don't feel that fear, and they enjoy getting away with a lie. So think Casey Anthony, O.J. Simpson, and I saw the same thing with Don Wills. Psychopaths also tell big, bold stories, so they don't mind fabricating, even to the police, but their stories lack emotional and relationship details, because psychopaths themselves don't feel emotions like you or me, or even have relationships like you or I might have. And then psychopaths struggle lying face to face. All that is to say, I think Don is a psychopath, but I'm not sure about Candace. She could be. And that's why I posted these 4 other tells of a psychopath for this video. Because clearly Candace is not the big, bold storyteller. Clearly, as far as I've seen, she doesn't exhibit duper's delight. But these 4 things I posted for my last video are not the only tells of a psychopath. So these 4, I believe, are going to apply to Candace. And as usual, I have not watched this video beforehand, so I'm anticipating these. These are what I'm looking for as I watch. And we'll just go through them here quickly so you can also listen for them yourself. All right, first of all, psychopaths excel at evasion and distraction. In other words, they're great at avoiding a question, distracting you from the question, or even distracting you that their answer didn't actually answer your question. Second, they excel at information treatment. And this is a hallmark of all the most advanced liars, even non-psychopathic ones. And we'll get into that once we see it, because it's a little bit complicated. Third, psychopaths use excessive narcissistic words. So I, me, my, you see a lot of that, more than average. And then unlike Patrick Bateman or any other psychopath that you might see in a movie, real psychopaths on average have lower IQs than the average person, right? So real psychopaths are usually pretty low IQ. Now, of course, there's exceptions, but the average psycho is low IQ. So when I see people in my comments on my last video saying, I might be a psychopath, I have some of these traits. If you're watching my videos, you're probably, in fact, I know you're high IQ. It's very unlikely you're an average psychopath if you are a psychopath. And then again, it's a depressing thing to be. You shouldn't want to be a psychopath. The real psychopaths are not like Patrick Bateman.
I question him, and he has an alibi, but,
What about those fellows that live around there in the Cornbread Mafia?
Cornbread Mafia.
That's what we call them where we live. I don't know if this.
I have no idea. I've heard about some hillbilly mafia type stuff and everything, and all these.
So if you're listening to podcast mode, you can't see this, but Candace is over here crying, sniffling, tearing up, and all of this could be evasion or distraction. One way to get out of an interview is to start crying and being reticent and refusing to answer questions, wanting to get up. And in the first segment, we saw clips of coming up later stuff, right, that we did this, and we see that she actually walks out of the interview. And that might be what's about to happen. So as far as I'm concerned, Candace hits the below average IQ mark. I haven't tested her, but she comes off that way to me. And then she does seem to be very good at evasion and distraction from what we've seen so far in the clips that show us what's coming up later in this interview. Now we really have to listen out for is the information treatment and the narcissistic words. I, me, my.
All these different voices. We've tried to steer clear from all these.
Just words up there.
I've tried to steer clear from all these people just as much as possible. And I think they've kind of seen us as targets because they have come up and stole our stuff. They come up in my shed and stole all my mechanic tools at one.
All right, so all the stuff Don is saying, we've already addressed lots of deceptive stuff that he does, particularly in answers like this, like, these boys instead of those boys. Talking about him like he knows them, even though he says he doesn't know who they are, right? If you don't know who the Cornbread Mafia is, how do you know they came and stole your tools? I'm not going to belabor that here because we've analyzed Don for 2 videos now. So if you want to see me dig deep into Don, watch 4 words hoaxers use and how to catch a psychopath, as well as the rest of the series. But right now, let's focus on Candace. So if you feel like, hey, DD, you missed this, you missed that, put it in the comments so everyone knows. I appreciate that, especially remember, if you're noticing something that I'm not commenting on, please put it in the comments. But just be aware, I'm also recognizing lots of it. I'm just not pointing it out so we can keep this moving and keep our focus on Candace.
One time, when they knew we were gone. They knew me and her were together. Just hang on.
Have you guys put any kind of security or anything on your place?
We don't have any kind of security.
Okay, now this is significant to me for a lot of different reasons. We haven't seen a lot of tears from her. She's talked about Summer. She's talked about her disappearance. She's talked about looking for her. She's talked about her being gone. She's gone down into her room where she lives. She's picked up her toys. She's held her toys. She's looked at the bed she's not in. She's looked at trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger, and not a tear. But then you ask about the Cornbread Mafia, which is a colloquial term for a kind of organized grassroots crime syndicate in Tennessee.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
And let's see what happens when you ask.
Now, regarding Dr. Phil here, it is interesting. This is where she decides to cut off the interview. Now, I've never heard of the Cornbread Mafia. I don't know what it is. But ever since my first video where we listened to some phone calls that Don Wells made and snippets from interviews, I have had the theory, we've developed the theory based on Don's own words, that Summer may have been sold to drug dealers, organized crime, traffickers, and Cornbread Mafia might be part of that, or at least it might be, a euphemism for what actually happened. And if that is what happened, then it makes sense that this is where she wants to cut off the interview. Right when they're starting to circle the truth, that's when she needs to get out. Right? She's not confident she can dupe them any longer. So it's time to distract and evade. Unlike Don, who, if they are both psychopaths, is a different type of psychopath. Right? He is happy to talk to them. He loves thinking he's tricking them, and he has no problem discussing big, bold stories. So we're seeing if we are, I can't diagnose Candace, I can't diagnose Don. Candace, I'm still on the fence about. But we can see two very different types of psychopaths if that's what we're seeing. And even earlier in my last video, they said that Candace did not want to do the interviews until Don convinced her to. Right? So the big, bold psychopath, if he is one, convincing the more distracting, evasive type. And as I said in that video, I believe that Candace is the more effective liar. I believe they are lying. And if they are, I believe Candace is more effective simply because she reveals less information, because she is so hesitant to talk and keeps her cards so close to the vest here.
Let's pay attention to her.
What about those fellas that live around there in the Cornbread Mafia?
Oh, Cornbread Mafia.
That's what we call it.
So we started by trying to give her a little space with organized crime.
Yeah. And so Greg brings up organized crime, doesn't register anything with her. As soon as I say Cornbread Mafia, we'll watch this side of her mouth start dragging down. Because that's when the emotion hits.
Cornbread Mafia.
That's what we call
Right there is when you say it.
I have no idea. I've heard about some hillbilly mafia type stuff and everything, and all these different boys. And we've tried to steer clear from all these.
This is wired up.
I've tried.
Just to reiterate some statement analysis from Don there, right? These boys suggest closeness as opposed to those boys. We try to avoid is not the same thing as saying we avoid. If someone says they're trying to do something, it's not the same as saying they don't do something. If he avoided them, he would just say that. So the fact that he says they try suggests that maybe he does have some connection to the Cornbread Mafia, if that's actually what it's called.
Tried to steer.
We call this insulating and running. She insulates, she starts crying, so we can't get to her. In other words, psychologically, we can't speak to her. And we see the emotion. As soon as I say Cornbread.
So he calls it insulating and running. I call it evasion, distraction. But once again, I'm surprised how much I agree with these guys, since we're looking at totally different things, right? They're looking at her mouth and her eyebrows and where she's looking. I think all of that is a waste of time, as I've said. If you are trying to catch a liar, specifically like this video, my last video, a psychopath, so someone who's extremely good at faking body language, who's extremely good at fooling people, you must use your limited brain bandwidth to focus on one thing. And in my opinion, you should always focus on the words. Even a psychopath cannot fake the words. They trip up. They say the wrong thing. They say too much. They avoid something they shouldn't avoid. They have plot holes. Even blockbuster movies have plot holes. So what chance does a low IQ psychopath have of telling a story that has no plot holes? If you pay attention closely, you should be able to figure it out. But once again, I do give these guys kudos because it seems like so far we're coming to the same conclusions, although I know from my comments that they think the Wells are innocent. So I'm still waiting to see how they came around to that. Only one of us can be right.
Cornbread Mafia right there, as we see that mouth start dragging down within seconds. And that's how long it takes to get into the brain and work around, do its thing, and say, hey, this isn't good. And it shows emotions coming from this that most likely shouldn't be there, which of course we'll discuss later.
I will also say, are the tears real? Absolutely, because you can't fake a snotty nose, just to use regular old terms. And what we know is that she is feeling pain, she is feeling emotion here that we didn't see any other place in the story. So this
But
feels
we don't know
tight.
what it is.
That's right.
Regarding what Greg just said here, personally, psychopaths can fake emotions very convincingly. They can fake a snotty nose. They can fake tears. So as far as her crying convincingly, that can fool body language analysis. It can also fool people who follow Ekman with the micro expressions. But what we look for is the disconnect between their displayed emotions and their reported emotions to spot a liar. Right, so it's easy to act. It's a lot harder to write the script. Then also, let's say Greg is right here and it's impossible to fake a runny nose. It's impossible to cry convincingly on cue. If they sold their daughter to the Cornbread Mafia and they feel bad about it, of course she would be crying. Or even if they're narcissistic or psychopathic, right? Even if they think, oh my God, they're getting close to catching me, I might spend the rest of my life in prison, she could still genuinely cry, right? So even if it's out of remorse for her daughter or just a selfish self-interest, oh my God, I'm about to go to prison for the rest of my life, I failed, this sucks for me. Crying is still acceptable, even if the tears are real. So real tears do not necessarily mean that someone is innocent. Just like not crying doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty. And I see lots of this in my McCann's analysis where early on, lots of people said, well, they never cried. I've never seen them shed a tear. So what? Plenty of people lose someone and don't shed a tear. Doesn't mean they're innocent or guilty, right? I personally think the McCanns are guilty, but not because of their demeanor or the way they carry themselves or their body language. I think they're guilty based on their words. Same with the Wells. Unlike Greg and Scott here, you don't have, in real life, if you need to catch a liar in real time, you don't have multiple people listening, right? One guy focusing on the face, another person focusing on their hands, another person focusing on their respiratory rate, another person focusing on the words. You only have yourself. You only have a limited bandwidth. You have to decide what to focus on. And the point of my channel is to try to persuade you to focus on the words. I think that's the best way to reduce the deception going on in society right now, is to catch and expose more liars. And I think your best shot of doing that, if you're a subscriber of the channel, is focusing more bandwidth onto people's words.
That's
It
right.
could be fear.
That's right.
It could be guilt. It could be fear and guilt. It could be...
Okay, so my bad. I interrupted Dr. Phil when he was actually making a good point, so let me rewind.
Also say, are the tears real? Absolutely, because you can't fake a snotty nose, just to use regular old terms. And what we know is that she is feeling pain, she is feeling emotion here that we didn't see any other place in the story. So this
But
feels
we don't know
tight.
what it is.
That's
It
right.
could be fear.
That's right.
It could be guilt. It could be fear and guilt. It could be any
Everything.
number of things.
We can't read minds, we read symptoms, as you say all the time. We read
Yeah.
symptoms, but those are pretty clear symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, I agree with these guys. I'm very intrigued to see where we're going to disagree. Unless everyone is wrong here, right? But I trust you guys in my comments, right? I trust my members. They tell me that the behavior panel believes that the Wells are not guilty. So I definitely disagree with them. I want to see where they come to that conclusion, or if it's a split decision between them, right? So half the panel thinks one thing, half thinks the other, or if it's a split decision between Candace knows something and Dawn doesn't, or Dawn knows something and Candace doesn't. I want to see how they came to that, because I think both of them have guilty knowledge. But I do believe that Dawn is the ringleader.
Yeah.
Clear from all these people, just as much as possible. And I think they've kind of seen us as targets, because they have come up and stole our stuff. And they come up and stole all of my mechanic tools at one time.
Also, notice how Dawn, this is why I think Dawn is the worst liar. He talks more, so it's easier to pick apart his words. Notice how Dawn laughed when they first said Cornbread Mafia, but now he's giving all the reasons why it might be the Cornbread Mafia. That is a plot hole. If this were to happen in a movie, on IMDb, under goofs, people would be pointing out that plot hole. The real world works the same way. If you don't think it was a Cornbread Mafia, if you don't think it was this organized trafficking group, why are you now telling me all the reasons it might have been them when just a few moments ago you laughingly dismissed it? Also, let's say I really didn't know what happened to my daughter. I really believe my daughter was kidnapped. I wouldn't laughingly dismiss anything.
One time, when they knew we were gone. They knew me and her were together.
Okay, at this point, she wants out. She came there to help find her daughter.
Correct.
But you've raised the stakes to the point that, forget about my daughter, I want out of this room.
It's all about me at that point.
I can't do this.
So notice what they said, it's all about me. Let's zero in on her words here, right? She has a missing daughter. Has she said Summer once? Has she even talked about Summer? Or is it all I, me, my, right? Excessive narcissistic words. Another sign of a psychopath.
So
Well, let's-
they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
Yeah, we're trying to
It's
help.
not helping me.
It's okay. So let's give you a minute, okay?
They're trying.
It's not helping me. That's a very telling statement. They're ostensibly doing this interview, getting on TV, consulting with these extremely qualified guys from the behavior panel, right, who have backgrounds in the FBI, all ostensibly to help find their daughter. And what does Candace say when she wants to get out of the room? It's not helping me.
They're trying to help, so they're not helping me.
That's right. That made us
They're
go
not
after-
helping me.
If she had said, well, how's this going to help Summer? Our response would have been different, but that
this
took us down the
happened,
path.
That's when
They're
we go
not
down.
helping me.
All right, at this point, I know I'm pausing every few moments. It's because I got so many comments on my last video. So even though I don't respond to all the comments, and one reason I stopped responding for a couple of days is I had so many spam bots on my account pretending to be me that I had to stop just so I could find all the accounts pretending to be me. So if you got a reply to a comment saying, hey, I want to talk to you on Telegram or WhatsApp or anything like that, that is not me. That is a spam bot. So if you see them, please do flag them. One way to tell is look at the username, right? So they use my photo, my avatar, but they have weird usernames. And I have my theories about spam bots. So if you've been here for a while, you might know my theories about them. But even if I don't reply to your comment, I do read them. And I had lots of comments of people saying, hey, DD, you really don't disagree with these guys as much as you think you do. I don't watch their videos. Part of the reason I don't watch their videos is just so my own analysis isn't biased. So once I develop my theory more, maybe we can do a video where I react to their analysis of the wells. So we actually watch one of their videos, or even their videos on the McCanns, where we also apparently disagree. But I want to develop my theory so it's ironclad before I entertain other theories so as not to be biased. So please let me know in the comments if you would like me to react to one of their videos. I think it would be interesting. Maybe once we're a little bit further down the road on this analysis and I've solidified my theory, right? Right now there's so many options still on the table. Like, was she sold by the parents, killed, kidnapped, but not technically, right? So taken with consent or some sort of understanding that if you do tell on us, we will get back at you, or you owe us money, so we're taking what's ours. I just want to zero in on that theory more. We're only 8 videos into the series.
Now, Candace refused to let our cameras inside the upper level of their home, but we were able to obtain footage of Candace giving a tour inside that part of the house. We'll take a quick look at that next. Now, I want to take another clip from their interview with Don and Candace, and let's take a look at just the entire clip, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
Live in the country, you don't expect that kind of stuff.
I'm not permitted.
No, I want to go.
These are tough questions.
No, I'm being interrogated again, and I don't want to do this anymore. Yes, I am.
We'll stop. I want you to feel comfortable.
No, I want. Oh, and I want to go home.
All right, so notice the evasion, the distraction. I'm the victim. I'm being interrogated. What did it do? It got her out of this interview. And I think the guys were correct to note that this happened when she was talking about the Cornbread Mafia. Is that a real thing? I don't know. There's definitely traffickers, though. And there is, as far as I know, some corridor in the South where people get trafficked. As far as the Cornbread Mafia goes, we'll keep that on the table under the theory that they may have actually trafficked their daughter. So they may have literally sold their daughter for drugs or for money or because they were extorted, who knows. But it was done with some tentative, at the very least, consent. If not just full-on consent in order to get something in return. And if you're new to my channel, I know I get lots of new subscribers whenever I do a Summer Wells video. I just want to give the normal caveat that I am aware how crazy some of these theories sound. This is literally the only case on my channel where I entertain such unusual, bizarre theories, and it's because those theories appear in the language of the parents themselves. And if you want to see what sparked these theories in the first place, please do watch my first video in this series. And the title of that one is, Can Suspects Project Their Guilt? And then you'll be on the same wavelength as me regarding this case.
I'm down. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, this is right after you asked about the Cornbread Mafia, and she had the response that we saw, and now she's fleeing the scene.
Yes.
So she starts, even before she flees the scene, by doing something that we refer to as the trancer in our true crime workshop, and that's making yourself unavailable. Whether it's doing this or emotional or something you escape, she's already escaped. It's just a matter of getting out of that wire.
Yeah.
The interesting piece is contrast their body language.
Uh-huh.
Don looks oblivious to all of this. He's trusting us and paying attention to us. She's not. It's an interesting.
Yeah, and at this point,
It sounds to me, now we're starting to diverge a little bit, it sounds like Greg is giving Don credit for that, as if Don is cooperative or nice, or maybe really trying to help. Remember, there are 2 types of psychopaths that we're looking at here. And I believe Don is a psychopath, and Don is the type that, in my opinion, would not be flustered by Candace crime, would want to appear cooperative and ingratiate himself with the authorities, right? He's the type who thinks that he's smarter than everybody. He can fool everyone, including these 2 guys from the behavior panel. So I'm not surprised that he's not flustered. And in fact, the fact that his wife is sitting there crying next to him and he's not reacting is a bit bizarre. But I don't do body language, so I'm not going to look too much into it. But just be aware that they seem to be giving him a lot of credit for playing along and being cooperative. In reality, that could just be ingratiation.
point, she's down in her chin.
You ask them a question and they feel they're being threatened, you'll see that chin drop. It protects the neck. It's something that happens from your limbic system. It's a psychological thing that happens. So the head goes down. That's what we're seeing there, along with a lot of I. She talks about it's not working for me, those types.
Wow. So me. They're keying on to the same things as me, surprisingly often. But in my opinion, the me, my stuff is a sign of it's an excessive narcissistic words, right? So it is a sign of a psychopath. I'm still not sure if Candace is a full-on psychopath. I'm all in that he is, even though I can't technically diagnose him. But as far as my analysis of him, I'm treating him that way. I'm looking for those tells, the psychopath tells, which are different than a normal tells of a liar. And Candace is starting to check a lot of the boxes as well.
Those types of things.
They get very emotional. They lock up. Their throat is protected by putting their chin down over their throat. And then typically in pre-confession, their body will open up, and that's when you close. That's when you go after them.
Yeah.
We wondered.
Now, when my producer asked the Wells for a tour inside their home to better understand what happened the day that Summer went missing, Candace refused. Then she changed her mind and led us into the basement, but only after they had time to clean it. But a month after Summer went missing, Candace did invite podcaster Chris Madonna of the Interview Room for a home tour. Let's take a look at a little bit of that.
I watched her walk in there, and afterwards, when she was already in there, I walked over.
This is something that lots of my subscribers told me to look at, and if this series continues to do well, we can look at some of Chris Madonna's interviews with the Wells. I've seen clips of this one, and basically Chris is a retired, I think, homicide detective, very good at what he does. And he actually went to their house a month after Candace went missing and videotaped it. And this is I've seen clips of this. I've seen part of it. The house looks like an episode of Hoarders, if you're listening on podcast mode, right? It is dirty, dingy, cluttered, messy.
I was like, "Why?" And he looked at me and I said, "Watch Sissy, I'll be right back." And that's when I walked back over to my mom's.
Okay.
And I was fixing her brace and stuff like that. And I said, "Well, Mom, I got to go back over with the kids." And that's when I come back up.
All right, so here, this is a story that Candace has told multiple times now. We've seen multiple variations of it. And each time the details are slightly changed, right? I think that the Wells have a tendency, they monitor social media. And whenever someone calls them out on something like, why was Summer's head shaved? Then they retroactively come up with an excuse, right? So she shaved her head because of lice. Or we shaved her head because of lice. Whereas initially, that's not what they said. So it's almost like a retroactive excuse, right? Only once you point out the loophole do they go and retcon and make up an excuse, and then they act like you're crazy for spotting the loophole. That seems to be the pattern with them from what I've seen. So let's listen to her story here. So she's talking about the moments when Summer was allegedly kidnapped. Summer asked to go inside, and then apparently Candace went over to her mother to help with her knee brace. So listen again.
Watch Sissy, I'll be right back. And that's I watched her walk in there.
So I watched her walk in there, past tense. One sign of a fabricated story is alternating between past and present tense. So here, just pay attention to the tenses.
Afterwards, when she was already in there, I walked over and I said, "Why?"
I walked over.
And he looked at me and I said, "Watch Sissy, I'll be right back." And that's when I walked back over to my mom's.
Okay.
And
That's when I walked back over to my mom, right? So past tense, past tense, past tense.
was fixing her brace and stuff like that. And I said, "Well, Mom, I got to go back over with the kids." And that's when I come back up into the house.
Okay.
I was fixing her brace. All right, so slightly different tense. I was fixing her brace, right? Not I fixed her brace.
With the boys.
Okay.
Not that.
You walked into the house.
I walked into here. Get up. Walked in here and them three were sitting right here in a row with their eyes glued to the TV, like always. And I said, boys, where's your sister at? Well, she just went downstairs.
If you're listening on podcast mode, you can't see this, but this house is filthy.
I'm on the play. So I went over here like this. So this is where the stairs are.
Okay.
It's actually down under there.
Oh, down into her
Down into
bedroom.
our bedroom, and then hers is on the other side.
Oh, okay, in the basement.
Yeah, in the basement.
Well, this makes sense now, see?
And then I yelled and I said, Summer, Summer. And she didn't. I listened for a minute. I didn't hear nothing. So I went like this, because this is how I would get down here.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to come down here or not.
Do I got to be tiny to get in there?
No, you should.
Can we come in from the other side?
Well, we can, but it makes more sense if you went this way.
Okay, I'll follow you. Oh, man. Good grief,
No, I know
girl.
if my 6-foot husband can fit down here, you can.
Huh?
My husband's.
All right, one thing about their story. If you've seen how filthy that house is, somehow she immediately knew that Summer was kidnapped. Does that sound plausible to you? She didn't entertain the possibility at all that Summer could be hiding behind some pile of trash or in one of the other rooms full of clutter, just standing there or eating a snack, or even in the room with the boys. It was so cluttered she could have been in there. So the conclusiveness that Summer was kidnapped, she had to have been kidnapped, is the sign of a red flag, just like the McCanns. Is the sign of a hoax, in my opinion, right? Just like the McCanns. Maddie she had to have been kidnapped. I knew instantly she was kidnapped. How? Or William Tyrrell. The parents did the same thing, right? He had to have been kidnapped without any searching, entertaining any other options, any animals that might have been involved. The over-conclusiveness, the immediate conclusiveness, despite the evidence, is a sign of a hoax. Right? It's different than if she went downstairs and there were muddy footprints, of a man-sized shoe, and the door was opened, and Summer's, bow was in the doorway. That's different. She came to this conclusion immediately, without any evidence of an intruder.
6 foot. I know if he can fit, you can.
Oh, my gosh. Way to go.
This is my husband's room.
Okay,
And over here, well, it's a mess again.
that's all right.
But this is where Summer and Little Waylon was.
In the interview, you ask if there's a door to her room downstairs. It's a basement room, but there's an outside door.
Correct.
You ask, could you hear?
If you follow or subscribe to Chris McDonough or are a member, please ask him. I can't comment on any of his videos. I think he has his comments turned off. I don't know if it's different for his Patreon members, but let him know that Deception Detective would like to react to one of his videos and see if he gives permission. Whenever you guys reach out to other creators, letting them know I'm looking into them or helping me basically get attention from them, it does a lot for the channel. I think that one of the best ways for creators to collaborate is to react to each other's stuff. That way you maintain complete control of your message while analyzing somebody else's message. And I encourage anyone who is a smaller channel, if you want to react to any of my videos or any of my videos inspired you, or you want to react to a piece of my video and apply something I've said to a different case, feel free to do that. And I actually created a playlist for anyone, a smaller channel, if you do have a YouTube or anything like that, who wants to be featured. So I just updated this today. It's a playlist called DDX Collabs. And I've already put some videos where other creators reacted to my videos. And one reason I want to do this is to build the network of truth seekers. So if you're a member or subscriber to my channel and you also want to grow your channel and look at other cases that I don't have time to look at, or add context to one of my videos by reacting to it and putting in your input, if I think your work is outstanding, I will feature it here. So I just updated this one. It's got 288 views. So it's a great way to showcase your channel and just build up the network between truth-seeking channels on YouTube. So if you react and tag me in the title so I get notified. It's a good way to help a smaller channel, but also bigger channels like Bad Boy Beeman or Pratt Brown. They reacted to me because subscribers commented to them that I was looking at stuff that they were interested in, and we reacted back and forth.
Here, if someone had opened that door.
She said, yes, you can clearly.
Okay, so we have footage of her opening that door. Let's take a quick look at the door.
I don't recall if this was locked or not. I don't recall that.
Okay.
But I know, it's hard on. But I know I did come out here and I said, Summer, because sometimes she'll sit right here.
There was a tiny squeak to the door, and that was it.
That was all.
You couldn't hear that up those stairs, through that cubby hole, and around through that cluttered room with the television on?
No.
All right, so they're picking apart the loopholes in her story. There is also another plot hole in the story that she says she didn't know if the door was locked or unlocked. Well, if someone took Summer from downstairs and went out that door, there's no way it could have been locked. It's not like they took Summer and went upstairs and ran in front of the boys and went out the front door. So unless there's another exit down there, it had to have been unlocked. So the fact that she says she doesn't know whether it was locked or unlocked suggests that this never happened.
That's inconsistent with everything I'm saying. Because everything I'm saying does not tell me that I have a hypervigilant mom on my hands here. It just doesn't add up to me. As I understand it.
Also, regarding her saying, I don't know whether it was locked or unlocked, that is actually a card in the deception deck. So, and we'll just cover this just so we hit everything. So, the four tells of a psychopath in this video are excels at evasion, distraction. We saw that with her crying. Excessive narcissistic words. We saw her say, it's not helping me, I, my, and the behavior panel guys also commented on that. Below average IQ is another tell of a psychopath. And I believe they are below average IQ. And I believe that the vast majority of psychopaths are actually below average IQ. So don't be fooled into thinking that psychopaths have some sort of superpower. All right, then the third one is excels at information treatment. The deception decks, I have them now, all in hand. They are shipping, so if you pre-ordered your deck, thank you very much. You are the reason this project became a reality, so they are shipping now. You should get a notification soon. And if you want to order one, you can go to deceptiondeck.com. And I'm just going to read you the card about information treatment. All right, so information treatment is in the concepts suit. So each suit of the deck has a different type of deception. So there's, right, so here the spades is words and phrases. Another one is grammar. Then there's cues and then concepts. All right, so here you can see some of the concepts. Right, so recognizing missing information, cooperative subjects, uncooperative subjects, spotting common lies. All right, so this is the card we're going to read here. So the deck is designed to be like flashcards, so you can memorize things. So on the front is the concept. Here the concept is spotting common lies, and on the back we have a quote for the concept cards and then an explanation. All right, so spotting common lies. The quote here to help you memorize the concept is, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Right, the testimony oath. And here is the rule to memorize. When evaluating statements for deception, consider the three components of the testimony oath. 1. Commission. This involves bold-faced lies of commission, where an individual outright contradicts the oath's pledge to tell the truth through direct falsehoods. Right, so the first type of lies is lies by commission. 2. Omission. Here, lies of omission occur. The subject tells part of the truth, but intentionally omits incriminating or crucial information, not adhering to the whole truth. Right? So, commission, violates I swear to tell the truth. Omission violates I swear to tell the whole truth. And the third is distortion. The final method involves information treatment. The truth is presented, but is warped with additional language, such as exclusion qualifiers or a passive tone, deviating from nothing but the truth. So, as I said, psychopaths are very good at the third type. They excel at information treatment, and this is the most sophisticated type of lie, because information treatment involves telling the truth but distorting it. And what Candace did there with the door could be an example of information treatment, where she says, I'm not sure if it was locked or unlocked. So it probably was locked, but that truth was planted in her response, and it was qualified with, I'm not sure. So as far as anyone's concerned, well, she doesn't know. Was it locked or unlocked? We don't know. Rather than telling a bold-faced lie, right, a lie of commission, which would be, it was locked, or it was 100% unlocked. And if she's lying, that would be a lie of commission. And then a lie of omission would be something like not even addressing whether or not the door was locked or not, because that could be a plot hole in her story. Right. Obviously, there would be better examples of it, where if she used more exclusion qualifiers, or less obvious ones, more subtle ones. But we're coming up to the end of the video here, so I just want to make sure I get that in there so you have all 4 of these tells of a psychopath.
What Candace says is that they were planting flowers.
Yes, sir.
She had a piece of candy.
Yes, sir.
They washed their hands, had a piece of candy. And then she says she walked her up the stairs to the house, inside, handed her off to the boys for supervision, that the boys said she went downstairs. Candace went back outside to help her mother with her brace,
Yes.
and came back in, and all of that happened within 2 to 3 minutes.
That's what she says.
I'm saying what she says.
Yes. Yep.
2 to 3 minutes.
Now, what Dr. Phil is saying here is one version of Candace's story. Another version is that they were repotting cacti. And yet another version, the first version that I saw, I think in their earliest interview, Candace actually skips over those 2 minutes. So she doesn't even address what happened to those 2 minutes. And this is also in the deception deck. It's actually an example on my temporal lacuna card. So I'm just going to read that one quickly as well. All right, so temporal lacuna is in the grammar suit, which is the clovers. So we have past tense, possessive pronouns, articles, exclusion qualifiers. All right, then we have temporal lacuna. This is a very important tell for deception. And Candace actually made it as the example, as I said, on this card. So here's the rule, right? So temporal lacuna, here's the flash rule to memorize. And then down here is the example. Words such as after, then, while, when, and within X amount of time indicate a leap through time. Liars often use these terms to omit incriminating parts of a story. So combining this with the last card, a temporal lacuna is a lie by omission typically. And here's the example. Candace, the first time she told this story. And there's a QR code on this card to go watch the video as well that I made about it. So here's the example. In 2021, Candace Wells' daughter Summer disappeared. Recounting the last time she saw Summer, Candace said, "I told the boys, watch Summer, I'll be back. And within 2 minutes, I came back, and she was nowhere in sight." The phrase "within 2 minutes" prompts us to question why she glossed over this period of time. It raises the possibility that she either omitted potentially incriminating details or that the story itself is fabricated. So when you tell someone a story of what you did, you don't leave your own story. You don't say, All right, so I said go inside. Within 2 minutes, I came back. A true story, you say what you did. I told Summer, okay, go inside. Then I went over and helped my mother with her brace, and then I came back. But the first time Candace told the story, there was a temporal lacuna. She skipped over those 2 minutes. And then they went back and filled in a story about plants. And then probably when people pointed out the issue with that, for example, that day Grandma got an injection in her knee because her knee was in so much pain. So typically when someone's in pain, the last thing they want to do is gardening. And like I said, their pattern is to update their lie in real time when people point out plot holes. And gullible people buy the excuse, right? They say, no. So when they say, actually, we were just repotting cacti, that's why we weren't that dirty and it wasn't that labor intensive. Mom didn't have to kneel down to dig up the dirt to replant something. We were just moving cacti from one pot of rocks to the other. Gullible people say, hey, she explained it. But that's not what she said the first time or the second time. Right? So you have to catch on to that. Don't be that so easily fooled. All right, so now Dr. Phil is telling the flower version of the story, right? And then there's a later version with cacti.
She called for Summer, no answer, and she immediately called Dawn on the phone and said Summer's missing.
I think she will tell you that she didn't. We got something different the other day. We heard that after she checked the house, she crawled around under beds, she did this, she did that. She put the boys out to look in the yard, and then she called Dawn, is what we heard.
So, right, it's hard. Faking emotions is easy for psychopaths. That's why I discount body language. I'd rather listen to words. Here we have an inconsistent story regarding what happened during those 2 minutes. And now the behavior panel guys got a different version of the story than Dr. Phil got. And I'm sure if we watched that video by Chris McDonough, he would get an even other version of what she did as soon as she thought Summer was missing. And those inconsistencies and plot holes are the sign of a made-up story, right? A sign that something's been scripted, but the people aren't quite intelligent enough to stick to the script.
Okay, so but she went on alert in 3 to 5 minutes.
Right. Correct.
Psychologically speaking, I have to tell you that's inconsistent with everything I'm seeing. Because everything I'm seeing does not tell me that I have a hypervigilant mom on my hands here.
Agreed.
I have a hard time believing that she would walk her up the stairs and hand her off lovingly to 3 babysitting brothers, go back and help her mother, and be back inside in 2 to 3 minutes calling for her daughter. Just the timeline doesn't work right. I don't believe she could get out there and back in 2 to 3 minutes. I don't believe she called for her in 2 to 3 minutes and went on alert in under 5 minutes and started a search.
I agree with everything Dr. Phil said there. So I'm curious where I actually disagree with these guys. So far in the series, I've been surprised how much I agree with the behavior panel guys and Dr. Phil. I think we're going to disagree about Dawn, because it seems like they're on Candace's case, but they're letting Dawn slip through the cracks. They seem happy with Dawn. I'm not happy with Dawn.
Or that she would call Dawn, and given Dawn's history with law enforcement, that his first reaction would be call the cops. Because every time the cops have been out there before that, it wasn't to serve and protect. It was to arrest and detain. I'm not saying that Candace is involved here. I'm not saying Dawn's involved here. I'm just saying it just doesn't add up to me. And when things don't add up, I need more information.
Yep.
Right. Coming up, Candace and Dawn are here. They're going to give their first national television interview. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. But they say they want to set the record straight, and I'm going to give them every opportunity to do that. When they come out, I'm going to ask you two to sit down here so you can observe them while I speak with them, and I'm going to see what we can learn. My goal here is to see if there's something we can find out. Maybe it's something that they have guilty knowledge of. Maybe it's something they know that they don't know. They're not aware that they know something that might be meaningful. They may know something they don't know is important. We're going to find all of this out when we meet them next.
I have two distant relatives that called TBI the second day after Summer's disappearance and told them that I'd done a horrific thing to my daughter and killed her, and they put it out there on YouTube. I started getting messages constantly, every day. It was bad.
Time for today. Tomorrow, the parents of 5-year-old Summer Wells sit down with me for their first national television interview. Candace has been reluctant to talk with me. She walked off during her interview with Scott and Greg. Will she stay and talk about Summer, or will she walk off from this stage? I have some very...
So Dr. Phil also recognizes Candace is this type of person, the one who excels at evasion and distraction. Whereas Don is very different. Don is the big, bold storyteller. But his fault, just like all psychopaths, is failing to report the correct emotions and relationship details in his stories. Because I believe he's a psychopath, it's my opinion, and psychopaths don't feel those relationships and emotions in the first place.
Very important questions to ask her. Here's a preview.
Tomorrow on Dr. Phil, the disappearance of Summer Wells.
What do you think happened?
I have no idea what happened.
What do her parents know?
You took your daughter in the house and you never saw her come out.
She just was gone.
But she didn't just vaporize.
All right, so if you've seen my whole Summer Wells series, you'll know that when we looked at this Dr. Phil interview, we actually analyzed them slightly out of order. Just because the video is broken up in two parts and I didn't check which one was part one and part two. So the first Dr. Phil one we did, the segment we analyzed, is called 4 Words Hoaxers Use in my playlist. And that is the first portion where Dr. Phil interviews them in studio. There's one last part left for us to do. So once this video hits, let's try to get to 100,000. And I'll prioritize it just like I did last time. Last time I asked you guys to please get to 50,000, and it's at 121,000 right now. So thank you to everyone who watched my video. Thank you to everyone who watched it all the way through. One of the most important things YouTube looks at is the watch time. So I truly appreciate everyone who watched that video. So if we can get this one up, I will, once again, like I said, I will prioritize it. There is one last part left in this Dr. Phil show, and that is the very last segment of the show. The very last, I think it's like 20 or half hour or something like that, 20 minutes or half hour left of him interviewing them in studio. And so far, I have not seen where I disagree with the behavior panel. So it's got to be there. I am curious to see it because so far I'm on track with them regarding Candace. I think we all are. But it must be the case that they dropped the ball with Don. So we need to see where that happens and why it happened, and even if they actually meant it. Because you can see how they're playing softball with the Wells to get them to come into studio and to stay in studio. All right, let's see, just some final messages quick. I only want to make videos that you guys want to watch. So a like and a comment is a vote for part 4 of this interview. And if you like this video, you'll love the one on your screen right now. It's recommended by YouTube for you. And if you want to watch all my Summer Wells videos, my Summer Wells playlist is also on your screen right now. Until next time.